You're listening to the Podcast Detroit Network. Visit www.podcastdetroit.com for more information.
This is Grand Design Podcast with DJ and Jerry Grand, where we link the chains of reason of sports, politics, and culture.
Welcome to episode 8 of the Grand Design Podcast. With me once again is my brother, Jerry Grand.
Greetings.
And also is Ryan, our engineer.
Hey.
I'd like to tell you how to get a hold of us. First is our website, granddesignpodcast.com. And you can email us at granddesigns@yahoo.com. You can follow us on Twitter at granddesignspod and follow us on Instagram at Grand Design Podcast. Today I'm going to be talking about something a little more personal, and it's have to do with hockey and an injury. Just to lay a little groundwork, I used to love playing hockey. I started playing about 1995, and we got up to 4 times a week. And ice hockey was everything to me. It would get me through my work week. That would be what I would look forward to playing. Played a couple years at the suburban school to learn to get better. And eventually we started playing in adult no-check hockey leagues, USA-sanctioned adult no-check hockey league. In Melvindale, we played for a little while. And in December 10th, 2003, on a very, very cold night, I did not want to go. And my pregnant wife, who was 5 months pregnant at the time, was laying in bed, and I crawled up next to her and I said, I don't want to go. And she said, stay, don't go. Well, I went anyways. I loved playing, and it turned out to be a very, very fateful night. It's an hour away from where I live, so that shows you how the dedication to play, how it was. I mean, we loved playing. Well, this particular day, just to tell you how it was going on for that game, after the first period, I'm usually soaked in sweat, totally soaked in sweat. This time, none, because the players who were on my wing before and after me were taking extra long shifts. So when I got out there, I ended up taking real short shifts.
We had too many guys that day, too.
This is true, but it doesn't matter. The point is they were all taking longer shifts. And
too many guys equal to no ice time.
Very, very limited ice time. Well, in the second period, I was the puck was going around the boards, around my goalie, and that was basically the last thing I remember, because I was hit from behind by a guy who was just a beast compared to me, so much bigger. I was quicker than him. He couldn't keep up with me, so he cross-checked me from behind. Jerry, you saw it. And what was your vision of it?
When you were going for the puck, instead of him going for the puck, he, in a non-checking league, wanted to be Bob Probert or Joey Koser. He took the stick across the back of your neck and just knocked your flag to the ground. The problem was you didn't stay down too long. You kind of got up a little bit because of well, at first, but
I did stay. Well, I lost at least 2 minutes maybe 5 minutes. I don't know. I didn't have a stopwatch on me, but the weird part is being conscious of coming back to consciousness. It started out in a really small circle and got bigger and bigger. The outside was all white, 100% white. And got bigger and bigger, and there was no sound until finally it was like zoomed out really quickly, and all of a sudden sound came back. I turned and looked with my head, and he was getting in the penalty box.
Yeah, well, basically, when you got up, I mean, asked if you were okay, you shook the dust out of your cobwebs, and you were more angry about your ice time.
Well, that was the reason I got up, because I said, and I used the F word to myself. I said, ain't gonna happen. F it, they're not going to take any more of my time away. I put one knee up, put the other knee up, and finally went and finished my shift. But I knew something was wrong.
The game, for that matter.
Yeah, I finished the game. There's the regret. I should have skated right off the ice then. But I knew something was wrong. When we came to the bench, I turned to my brother and I said, Jerry, there's something wrong with me. I can tell there's something off.
So did you have like shooting pain and like?
Oh, I had tingling.
Yeah.
I had my extremities, both feet and legs were I don't want to say totally numb, but like pins and needles.
Right, yeah.
Yes, exactly. I just knew something was off, and I had a headache.
Yeah.
I had a headache like you would not believe.
You got hit by a car.
Yeah.
Just basically.
It made me think I had a concussion. So at the game ended, I was so bad. I told my brother, Jerry, I said, I can't drive. It was my car. I said, you got to drive home. And he did. I had kind of bad insurance at the time. It was an HMO. So you had to go see a doctor, get a referral, go to another doctor. And then finally, when I got to the doctor, I was going for a concussion. That's my reason for going, because I thought I had a concussion.
Seemed like you got knocked out. I mean, that's what it sounds like to me. So,
And that's why I thought I had these ringing headaches. And the doctor said to me, nope, you don't have a concussion. He said, actually, you're at the wrong doctor, but I'll take an x-ray for you. And he took the x-ray. He said, he gave me a referral for another doctor, of course, the HMO, and sent me home. Well, on the way home, I got a call from him, and that's when I knew something was wrong. He told me, don't get in a car accident, which how can you voluntarily do that?
Yeah.
He also told me, don't walk on ice. But he wouldn't tell me what was wrong. So, well, the exact diagnosis, what I mean by what was wrong.
Yeah.
He just said, there's something wrong and you need to get back to the doctor he told me. And the doctor he told me was Dr. Thomas out of St. Joseph's in Ann Arbor. So I scheduled the appointment and I go in. And this was, the injury happened December 3rd. It wasn't until the end of January where I finally got to see Dr. Thomas.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That is so much time in between. It's
It is. And once again, I didn't know the extent of what was wrong with me at this time. So I see Dr. Thomas. He takes another x-ray and has an MRI done. But that I had to come back for the MRI, but he shows me in the x-ray that my orbital bone, the bone that sticks through your skull, was off by 14 millimeters. He said that it shouldn't shift more than 2 millimeters. And in the x-ray, you could literally see the bone way away from where it should have been.
Oh my God.
It was scary.
That is terrifying.
I went to other doctors seeing for headaches, and I knew it wasn't a concussion this time, but I was still having headaches. So I was going to other doctors, and at least the 3 doctors that I saw said the same thing. You're lucky to be alive or not in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
When I went back after the MRI, Dr. Thomas told me what the extent of the injury. I had fractured my C2. They call that the hangman's fracture. That's what happens when they hang you, and that's the bone that snaps, and that's what kills you.
Oh, okay. All right.
He did one surgery in February of 2004, and all he did was put a bridge wire in, and it failed almost immediately. He did a second surgery in September of 2004. Now, at that time, the first time he took the first surgery, he took a piece of bone out of my left hip. The second time he took a piece of bone out of my right hip and tried to fuse that with instruments. That lasted for about 2 months. And this is the freaky part. At the time, I had one of the older refrigerators where the freezer was on the top. Now I can't do that. It has to be on the bottom. I can't even reach up.
Yeah.
And I went to open the freezer door, and it felt like spiders went from my chest crawling. I mean, 1,000 of them crawling all the way up to my forehead, to my top of my head. And, I had broken the instruments at that time. It was done. When I called Dr. Thomas, went back and saw him, he basically cut me loose. Said, there's nothing I can do for you. I don't know. I can't help you. You're on your own. It was,
How can a doctor say that?
it was devastating.
Yeah.
He said, if you want, you can go to Detroit Medical Center in downtown Detroit, or you can go find a doctor of your own. I had no idea what to do. I was very fortunate though. I found the doctor who actually saved my life. His name is Dr. Tek Moon Soo. He's a very funny guy, and he's brilliant. I owe him. I literally owe him my life for what he did for me. When I went and saw him, he didn't take any. He just saw the x-rays and MRI that were taken previously. And after he saw them, he left me in the room for about 10, 15 minutes. He came back, looked me in the eye and said, if I don't fix you soon, you're going to be a quadriplegic and on a breathing machine. So it got even more heavy at that point.
Yeah, like your life's like slowly crumbling,
And she was pregnant at the time, like I told you.
Yeah, exactly. Like no better time, right?
Well, wait, she was pregnant at the time for the first surgery. By this time, we had just had our little girl. So she was not even 1 year old at the time we saw Dr. Sue. Okay. So it was still a very, very shaky time. And especially to lose a husband at that point in time would have been totally devastating for any time, let alone. So, we go for the surgery. And I knew that day that it was a bad feeling. I just had this really bad feeling that something was going to go wrong. When I got out of the car, every bit of my rational mind said, run the opposite way. Do not go in there. I don't want to. It took a lot of courage. It really did for me to go into that hospital that day because I just knew that it wasn't right. And then 2 failed surgeries and a third one on the way. The odds were against me. Mm-hmm. He told me before the surgery that it was just going to be one day that they plan on taking 2 ribs out of me and putting it up into my neck along with rods and screws. Well, that's not what happened. All they could do that day was take out the 2 ribs. Jeez. Yeah, well, they didn't tell me that. Okay, yeah. So they scheduled the second surgery for the next day. It was October 15th of 2005 is when this surgery happened, the first one. They tell me you're going to have the second surgery the next day at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I send my wife home. Of course, she's going to have to stay at the hospital for the night and expecting it for me to call her when it gets close to the surgery. I couldn't sleep that night. I literally got 0 sleep whatsoever. And all through the night, I'm saying to myself, it's okay. I have the day. I can sleep during the day. I don't have to worry about it. I can get to sleep later. 6 o'clock in the morning, they come in and say, we're taking you down now. I had no sleep and my wife wasn't there.
Yeah.
I had to call my wife. And just to look in her eyes when I saw her, it was not a good time. The omen really happened on the way to the surgery that day. This was the second day. They were pushing me on the bed, and the doors opened into where the elevators were. There were like 3 or 4 sets of elevators. One elevator opened up, and this gentleman came out with a nurse. I assume a nurse, could have been a doctor, straddling his chest. He was pale and just pumping his chest. And I looked at that and I said, uh-oh, this isn't good. So we go into the room, and I didn't know this at the time, but Dr. Sue came in 2 days later and told me the second he cut me open, I lost a pint of blood and went white as a sheet. They also lost my spinal signal for 2 hours. So I was technically paralyzed for 2 hours on the table. I don't know how anyone else experiences being under anesthesia for a surgery, but for every surgery I had before that, it was just out. Blank.
Yeah.
This particular surgery, I remember seeing these neon flashes of light. I mean, just going back and forth. And it wasn't for very long, but I remember seeing it. Well, Dr. Sue explained to me why that happened. When he lost the signal to my skull, to my spine, he took my skull and was shifting it back and forth.
Man, this is getting so uncomfortable. I mean, you obviously went through it. No, this is crazy.
Oh, it's very crazy. Especially, well, I went through it, but didn't know it at the time.
True, but just still, it's like, just not, keep going. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Yeah. It's okay. It's just that weird seeing those neon flashing lights and then knowing what it was later. And he obviously found the signal, and he put, I have 2 ribs now that are fused into my neck and my cervical spine. And I have, 2 rods that go from my skull to the 3rd vertebrae with like 8 screws in there.
Wow.
And a lot of pain.
Yeah.
A lot of pain. Almost every day I'm in pain.
Yeah.
The more I do, the more pain I'm in, but that's beside the point. Dr. Sue came in 2 days later. The first day he let me rest. He comes in 2 days later and you demand, you made it through. So apparently he wasn't thinking I was going to make it through, or he wouldn't have even said that.
Jeez.
So that was that made me feel good. Actually, it did. It put a smile on my face. He even said, "You must have Chinese genes."
Yeah.
He did. So, I mean, he's a very funny guy. And like I said, he's a genius. He saved my life.
Yeah.
Well, he also told me, and he could have been looking out for me when he told me this, but he said it was just going to be a soft collar. It wouldn't be any big deal. That's not the case.
Yeah.
He put me in a halo. And that halo, that name is very ironic because what it is a medieval torture device.
Okay. So what does that? Explain that.
A halo is they put it's like a chest brace.
Yeah.
That is connected. There's rods connected to the chest, the front part of it, and the back part of it. And the rods go up and they put the rods are connected to this, what is called the halo. It goes around your head.
Okay.
But here's the scary part. Thick screws they take and screw them literally into your head.
Yeah.
I have two scars. I have two where they're in the forehead and two in the back of my head.
Wow, because they have to have them that tight. Jeez.
Oh yeah. Okay. So it bled when they put them in because it came down my eye. And tell a story about that when they were putting it in. In the hospital when they put it in, they were allowed to give me some anesthesia local so that I didn't feel it quite as bad going in. And the two women that put him in, they were just beautiful. One was a Latina lady. She's brown eyes, just beautiful. And another was a doctor who was blonde and had blue eyes and she wore glasses. And glasses do something to me. So the blonde doctor, I'm assuming she was a doctor, was actually almost on top of me. And the other lady who was more of a technician was the blonde was on the left side of me, the technician on the right side of me. And as they're screwing it into my head, I literally said to myself, this is what I get for wanting to be screwed by two girls at the same time.
Yeah, I was going to say that is so funny. Oh man.
My wife is in the corner watching the whole thing too.
Yeah.
So at least.
See, there's a positive spin on it, right?
At least I got my sense of humor out of it.
Yeah.
But the scary part was, when I got out of the hospital, they weren't allowed to give me anesthesia out of the hospital for that. And they have to tighten the screws.
So just all this pressure in your head?
Oh, yeah. And let me tell you, when she tightened it, that was immense pain. And besides that, when you're in the halo, you can't change your facial expression.
Jesus.
You can't smile. You can't frown. You can't frown. You can't cry. Nothing because think of the screws into your forehead. They are tight, pulling everything. So if you change the facial expression, the tightness just brings a whole bunch of pain. So I was stuck in that same facial expression for almost 8 weeks.
Jeez. That's crazy.
It is.
But it's necessary. That's like what you need, especially like with your spine and all that, your head moving around could just make
absolutely.
that so much worse, So.
Oh, absolutely. And, I wasn't used to it because, when you walk, when doors and stuff, but these things came out. They were out a good, maybe 6 inches to 8 inches in front of you. And so I wasn't used to it. So I would hit walls and stuff while walking by and it would reverberate. My little girl she was about 1 at the time, she recoiled when she first saw me because her daddy, this was not her daddy that she saw. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah. To her, that's probably exactly what I was. Yeah. I was a monster. Yeah. And, when she finally warmed up to me and I would pick her and put her up in my arms, she would grab out of the bars.
It's like, don't do that.
No, well, she didn't want them on me.
Oh,
I could tell she was trying to get them off of me and she would shake me and I would have to go with the flow. I could not hold back at all and she was only less than 1. So she really wasn't that strong, but still it was a weird experience having to see your daughter like that for the first time coming home.
Did you talk to the guy ever after the fact? Yeah.
No, never did. Tried to do lawsuits.
Yeah.
And there's one lawyer that I'll never ever go to them again. The one that you 1-800 and call them with that name after it.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, he literally says to me, I called the Canton office. He says, I'm not saying you don't have a lawsuit, but because you didn't get carried off in the stretcher, I'm not taking your lawsuit. Now, I see those commercials all the time. They say they care for people. They care for you when you're injured. They didn't care for me one bit because he didn't think that he didn't work hard enough. He had to work too hard to get to win the case. I think a lot of the problem was, and this is for hockey in general, it's what I call the Don Cherry mentality, the thug mentality. That guy who hit me, he was falling for what was in the culture, and the culture in USA hockey, men's hockey, it's supposed to be no check, is hit. Yeah. You're not a man if you don't hit.
That's true. Yeah, no.
Well, a referee once told us, for us, it was check, no check. For the guys with skill, you have to check. But the guys with no skill, obviously, you don't check them, you don't hurt them. So those refs knew right off the bat they were going to allow checking. And this guy was, like I said at the start, he was trying to be Bob Probert.
Yeah, he was. And like I said, I don't think he was trying to kill me. I don't think he was trying to break my neck.
No, he was just playing the game of hockey.
He was trying to check me and didn't realize how much. I don't even think to this day that guy knows what he's done to me.
No,
yeah.
No. He does not.
But once again, I don't believe he was out to hurt me. He was out to check me.
Yeah, that's probably right. It's like you wouldn't want to, you'd have to be really crazy to be that kind of person. Not saying there isn't, but I would probably put money that he didn't mean to do something like that. But
no, he didn't.
Again, when you're saying that there had already rules that you're not supposed to be checking, it's like, come on, man.
We're in an adult league where these guys have to get up and go to work the next day.
Exactly.
And that's why it shouldn't happen.
Yeah, for sure.
And this brings us back to that thug or Don Cherry mentality, because it goes from Don Cherry and him. You got to hit. That's what it means to be hockey, to be a man, the Gordie Howe type of hockey.
And still to this day, he still preaches that.
Yes, he does. And it literally trickles down all the way into the mite level. And that's what they live in. That's what they think hockey is. But I know it can be different because the culture of the women's sports, there is no checking in women's sports. If you watch women's, the Olympics, or even just, they even have pro leagues now, there's no checking.
Yeah.
They don't. So it's possible to do it without checking. You can do it in the pros all you want. You can do it in the minors all you want, or even going up to it. But when you're in a USA sanctioned no check hockey league, there shouldn't be checking.
No, I agree.
It shouldn't be necessary.
Now, for the youth hockey, they're putting stop signs on the back of their shirts now.
I think that's
just
more
like
specific.
a bigger target.
No, you're right, but I think that's specifically for
if you can read this,
hitting straight in the back, not just for checking, but
pretty
for
much
hitting in the
almost
back.
what happened.
It is. But I guess it's a nuance.
Well, it's a claim of trying to change the culture when they're not. Because like Ryan just said, that's more of a target. It just gives them more of a reason to hit. They don't need a stop sign with the women.
Well, during this time, in between my second and third surgery, you guys can remember what happened with Todd Bartuzzi and Steve Moore.
Oh yeah,
Todd Bartuzzi chased down Steve Moore in an NHL game, hit him from behind, drove him into the ice, broke his neck, 3 vertebrae, and he's never played hockey since. Steve Moore.
Jeez. And Bartuzzi has shown no remorse and says he doesn't have to show remorse.
He did show remorse when, remember the press conference he had and he was crying? Okay, I'd have to say that's remorse.
Yeah,
he was crying. Unless he's an actor.
That was for the cameras. The following games and the following career, even when Moore couldn't play anymore, he wouldn't recognize, they wouldn't even talk about it, and wouldn't even say sorry publicly.
I don't forgive Todd Bartuzzi. It's not mine to forgive him. It's up to Steve Moore to forgive it. However,
I agree.
The ones I blame are Brad May, first of all, because I guess you need to tell the story. Steve Moore had hit Marcus Naslund of the Vancouver Canucks and knocked him out for 3 games, knocked him out of play for 3 games. And Brad May said, put a price on Steve Moore's head.
Yeah.
Because of that right there, I blame Brad May and Mark Crawford, the coach. In between,
that's who's more of default as the coach, because he told them.
In between the periods, he pointed to Steve Moore's number and said he needs to pay for what he's done. And then Todd Bartuzzi went out and did what he did.
That still happens today.
It does. But once again, it goes back to what I brought this up in, the thug mentality.
Yeah.
It takes a thug to do something like that. It takes a thug to point at someone's number for a game, a useless, and it's a kid's game. There's no, it wasn't even on the line for the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just a regular season game. This was revenge. I mean, a thug mentality. I don't think it has any place in society, let alone into a hockey game.
Yeah, that kind of bleeds over probably into a lot of other stuff, and that's probably so common in every sport. If it's football, hockey, whatever, if they're aggressive players, it doesn't matter if it's a professional game, amateur, whatever. I mean, they're going to play just that aggressive. I mean, they shouldn't, but there's just so many people probably like that,
Yeah, but I think it's a problem in the culture of hockey.
Yeah.
I really do. At least men's hockey, like I said,
Yeah.
there's a difference.
Part of it is, and none of it's going away a little bit, but you got to have that thug to self-police. You got to have that Bob Probert and Joey Kosher to go out there, like Wayne Gretzky had Marty McSorley, and no one dared touch Wayne Gretzky because of Marty McSorley and Mark Messier. Period. They weren't allowed to touch. And those guys would go back and retaliate.
You realize, though, you're advocating vigilantism?
I'm just telling you, that's the hockey. They have, because the refs won't call. We had the discussion earlier about referees. All right. So because they can't call it, they have to, the teams have to self-police. And you got to have that goon that can skate. I mean, who's the guy in Washington now? But he's got some talent. He's the new age goon. I forget his name.
Ryan Reeves is the goon. Wilson, Tom Wilson.
Yes. That guy's got some skill, unlike any other goon, big guy. And
he can skate. Usually the goons can't skate.
But he protects the star players.
But if you were doing, we started this whole podcast off talking about principle. If you were living by principle, you would not need to vigilante. You would not, because you would know that's not how you should play.
But here we go again with John Cherry. It's that's him whole self-policing. You got to have that thug because the refs won't. Look, if the refs called the game, it'd be like the women. They wouldn't need to have the thug. The thug would be out if the refs called it like they should. But because they don't.
I agree. There's blame as far as the thug mentality.
I want to say
that is spread around.
That's 80% right there. If you take away that the refs did their job, you wouldn't have a need for the thug.
I totally agree. If they called every single play, every single infraction. Like they should, you're absolutely right. That would take it away. But let's just say they don't. Why do they have to still have the thug mentality?
Like Ryan said, though, you're going to have that one person that's, is going to have that mentality that's just going to do it for whatever reason. It's that one person that's going to take it to the nth degree for whatever reason, because he was brought up that way.
Yeah.
He wants the winner, it's being a man. I mean, I could go.
Well, then that one person would still be wrong.
No, absolutely. But that one person's still going to take it to the next level and be dirty. That here we go, that thug mentality.
Well, if you're going to police it or vigilante it, as I said earlier, wouldn't it be to get him out of there, saying this is not how we do it? If they were truly men, they would take care of it in the locker room, say this is not how we do it, this is not how we play the game here, and then it wouldn't happen again. You'd get one instance, and you'd get the social feedback, and then it wouldn't happen again.
Yeah, that's, okay, I guess in theory it should happen that way, but we were talking the other day about Gordie Howe and Ted Lindsay. I was watching some film of them, and Ted was a little guy who was a little instigator. Now, the guys would go back after Ted until Gordie came in the picture, and those guys just turned around and left. They wanted nothing to do with Gordie Howe. And he was that, come on, that was the whole era of thugness.
I agree, okay? But that was a different era, and I don't think it applies necessarily to today's hockey world. However, Gordie Howe, I think, is a symptom. The way he played with the elbows up into the corners. It's
kind of my point. It's bled all the way from the 50s all the way now. It's that Gordie. I even hear Gordie Howe hat trick.
Okay. Can we think? Why do we have to constantly? Tradition is not necessarily.
I would agree with you, but for some reason it's not happening. Hockey is that in football too.
And when it doesn't happen, people get their necks broken. And I just thought myself and Steve Moore, two people that have had their necks broken because of the thug mentality that is in the culture of men's hockey.
And unfortunately, it's going to happen when these girls start playing with the boys. That's going to be the next injury, or I want to call it a thug, but it's almost like Ryan's saying that's a girl. When we were talking about when the other teams realized that we had a girl goalie, they took it easy. They thought they had a nice
until
night.
They realized she was good.
And then when she's showing them up and they couldn't score, they got upset. They started getting dirty and taking on everybody else. So my whole point is there's that thugness.
You're showing
again.
me the flaw of the male thinking. That shouldn't have mattered. So if it was a male person, a male goalie.
But I'm telling you, you're going to get that one person that's a girl playing football. I'm going to eliminate her. Just for the sake of, it's wrong. It's completely wrong.
It's sad.
But it's almost like what Ryan's saying. It's that one person it's beyond sad. It's disgusting, but it's still that one person is going to be there to take it to that level. And what can you do to prevent that?
It's philosophical. You need to get principle that the thug mentality
That's
is not how you
difficult to
play
get
the
that
game.
into the sport.
Just because it's difficult doesn't mean it shouldn't be done.
No, I agree. But that person there, the last thing on his mind is philosophical principles.
Yeah.
No. Like the ethics of emergency, okay? You can't, there's a fire in a house. You're not going to sit there and think philosophically, oh, what do I do? They have to be already in your head. See, if they were already in his head, then he would have known that was wrong. See, it's way too late to do it on the ice. It has to be done well in advance. And I'm even talking when they're kids, because that's the proper time to start giving proper moral principles. Morality is right or wrong.
Look, it can be
choice.
done because they used to play with no helmets and then the safety, and now it's mandatory. Before it was.
Well, just think about that. There was a time when Gordie Howe played where they wouldn't lift the puck. I know those guys could. They played every single day. I know they could lift the puck, but they never lifted the puck. Why? Goalies weren't wearing masks. So if they can police themselves doing that, why can't they police themselves in other aspects as well?
I agree, but I will say the equipment was nothing to where now they got boomerangs for blades.
That's not the point.
They got question marks.
They did it. They were able to not do something because they knew that would hurt the goalie. They knew it.
And the second you put the mask on the goalie, what happened?
Well, I think
they started shooting for his face, his head.
I think that happened because of the first slap shot, and then it's all.
You had that one person. I'm going to hit him. He's got a mask now.
No, it had to happen. There's an evolution of the game.
So you're right.
But the point is, they collectively said we're not going to do that. We're not going to go after the goalie's face because he wasn't wearing a mask. That was living on principle.
And when did it stop?
When did that principle stop?
Yeah.
Well, when the goalie donned the mask.
And got the mask. And all of a sudden, principle went out the window. And from that point,
yes, it did.
It grew.
But doesn't that prove that they can live by principle? Doesn't it prove that in
one aspect of not lifting the puck? You're right.
If you can do it by one aspect, you should be able to do it by 1,000 aspects.
But okay,
you shouldn't limit
it to the number of. Gordy had principles when he was going down shooting at the goalie, but when going to the corners, principle went out the window and the elbows were up in the air and it was all out the door.
Why does it stop there? Why does it stop there?
Because Gordy's that one person.
Gordy was a great player. I don't want to take anything away from him, but the elbows in the corners going up, that's vicious and wrong. Now, I don't care how great he was. It shouldn't have happened. Now, if that is the seed that sprouted the thug mentality, then he was wrong. I can't say it was. I don't know for sure. I can't go back, and tie it all in. But if it was, then he is culpable because it led to what we have today. And what we have today is a thug mentality. People get hurt and not just breaking legs. I mean, slashing.
Yeah.
Hitting people's hands
and puck flying around. That's like a bullet. So
yeah, that's in itself. But when you got a stick and you're tomahawking people,
that
you have skates on. I mean,
the blades alone. Yeah, true.
So, if there's a lesson in it to stop people from getting this kind of severity of an injury, the thug mentality has to go away in hockey. As long as we have the thug mentality, people are going to get hurt. Not necessarily as bad as I did, but people are still. No,
it's still happening. People who will get hurt and worse for that matter. It's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think you can really do much about that, just because there's going to be emotion with competition, and you can't really police that with just people in general. So
well, let's get specific. I understand your point, but let's get specific. Do you remember the Steve Moore and Todd Bertuzzi incident?
I can't say that.
Well, he chased him down.
Yeah.
He was emotional.
For sure, yeah.
He should have said no, this is wrong. And like I said, Mark Crawford was part of the blame to that because the coach telling you to do that. But that means you're not a thinker. You were Todd Bertuzzi at that moment was
people good for their career,
and sometimes
it doesn't.
It breaks people's necks.
Exactly.
And that's what it was. Because in short, Bertuzzi was taking an order. He was following the coach's direction.
Well, let's go to war then. If your sergeant gave you an immoral order, do you have to follow it?
I think they happen all the time when
that's not the question. I didn't ask if it happened.
Yes, sir.
I asked if you have to
how
follow
high?
it.
What do you want me to? I mean, they're trained actually, not question.
Dude, still, there's a time when your training has to be in your own head.
But I think,
and even if they give you an immoral order, I mean, wasn't that what was the problem with the Vietnam War? and all the immorality that the so-called American troops.
Yeah, but I think when you show that, when you're in training and you show that individualism, you're out. You're done. They're going to break you.
I agree.
To where you are not thinking.
I get your point.
And now you're not going to question the general who's saying, go do whatever.
Should always question authority.
No,
always,
I agree.
Always.
But
I didn't say you shouldn't follow it. And you should follow authority when they're telling you to do a moral act. But if they ever tell you to do an immoral act, I mean, let's not even take it to a war. Let's take it to a workplace scenario. You're working and your boss tells you to go and do something immoral, even if it's just stealing from the cash register. Are you telling me that you have to follow that?
See that?
Or can you stand on principle and say, no, I'm not going to do that?
Correct. But at that time, I have seen people who had families. And they literally told me, look, I got to put family. I got 4 kids and a wife. And if I don't steal this money, which I know is wrong, but if I don't follow my boss's order, I got a family that I've just let down. So that puts this and I hear you, but there's where it's it goes back to where now they're thinking of not just themselves, that boss, but their family.
The only way the family is a justification is if they were literally starving. Then
I'm just telling you,
then
thinking.
I can get stealing to feed your family because that is for survival and that is morality. The point of morality is to further the existence of mankind.
I'm not trying to justify. I'm telling you that person that was told to steal, they got other things on their mind when they do it. It's not just the boss.
It's not legitimate.
I agree.
It's not legitimate if their family isn't starving. If it means you lose a job and go find another one. That's legitimate. Now, if they're, like I said, if their family's starving, I get that because you're doing it for a life. There's nothing more moral than that. However, the situation I put forth, that's not what it is. And there's a time you have to think. And you also have to do it in a time of war. And the only reason I brought up the time of war thing is because bombs are going off all around you. It's a hectic situation. But that's almost like it was on the ice for Todd Partucci.
And some of these guys we play with, though, I mean, we didn't play organized hockey. They did. And they had that upbringing to where it was, go out there and take your stick, hack them across the wrist, take the stick across the neck, cross-check them. I mean, they were taught and coached to do that. Now they're out in a recreation league.
Bad habits.
Well, number one, they're not mindless robots, first of all. They're not. They still have a brain in their heads that can think for themselves.
Principles is the last thing on their mind.
My point was, when did I tell you it had to start? When they were young.
Yeah.
They had to teach them then.
It's pretty much too late for the ones that are in the adult league now.
No, it's not too late. Those are still thinking people. And anyone can turn it around. Anyone can. Anyone can start thinking.
Of all the guys
you have to do that.
But of all the guys that we play with hockey, how many are the ones that are actually going to stop and turn it around?
Why does that matter?
It's just.
I would be happy if someone would listen to this.
I'll just say it's you and I, though.
One person turned it around. I would feel like then this podcast was worth it because one person started thinking.
Completely agree, but I'm not sure that one person, just the way the mentality of the population is with philosophy. They don't even no. I don't want to even talk about that. It has nothing to do with it. I mean, they're totally out of whack with their principles.
Nobody wants to talk about philosophy. In fact, the majority. The masses are incurably ignorant, as Plato used to say, but nobody wants to. They get bored with it. When I start talking about it, you can see in their eyes that they're just bored. But what these people don't understand is they live by a philosophy. You have no choice about that.
And that's the problem.
Your only choice is which philosophy you live by. That is what needs to be taught to these kids and to the adults, that it is philosophical when you say, I'm not going to be a thug.
Well, heck, right now with the youth sports league, it's even worse with the parents. I mean, the parents are yelling at the coach, or fighting in the stands, and my kid's not playing, and my kid isn't going to come out next week to the game because he got less ice time. I've heard that too.
No, it's true, but we're talking about more non-thinkers.
Yeah, that's my point.
So that doesn't mean we don't try to get them to start thinking. You're right. It's prevalent throughout our society. But that doesn't mean you throw away philosophy.
It's just a tough fix.
It doesn't mean you throw away principle. It means it's harder to fix it, but you got to work harder at it to get it fixed.
Well, let's hope the start of this podcast, them listening to this, it's a start. Just like you said, one person.
Let's hope we can reach one person, and not just this episode, but all of our episodes. The whole point of our podcast, for me anyways, is to show the underlying theme that's behind the scenes of hockey, of football, of baseball. It's more than just playing. In fact, any human endeavor is more than what it actually is, because in order to do any action, you have to think about it first. And the thinking is the philosophical part.
I agree.
So to get back to my story, what I learned from my injury is to appreciate every single day because it is so precious and
You know,
you don't know
but-
when you're going to lose
And you hear a lot
it.
of people say that, and yet people just, it's not going to happen to me. We hear it all the time.
And I'm trying to warn you. For
I
someone who it did
completely
happen
agree.
to, go hug your wife. Go hug your kids. Hug all your loved ones. Appreciate everything you've got.
Don't take 1 minute for granted. I completely agree.
That was my biggest lesson. It took me 10 years to learn that my neck doesn't define me, and that was way too long. I should have learned it much more than a decade, but it happened the way it was. But still, I eventually learned. And once again, you only learn by thinking.
It's the first step. I agree.
And I implore everyone who is listening to this to start thinking, to start to think for themselves. Understand that thinking is how you live. And when we think about it on a basic level, what is man's tool for survival? An eagle has his talons and his wings. Animals live by instinct. Man has no instinct. Man lives by a thinking, rational mind.
The mind.
Without that, there's no survival. The mind is what's necessary first before you can even be moral. So we need to start thinking and then be moral people.
Well said.
Well, I hope it did reach somebody. Once again, if you want to get in touch with us, our website is granddesignspodcast.com. Email is granddesignspodcast@yahoo.com. Follow us on Twitter at Grand Designs Pod and follow us on Instagram at Grand Designs Podcast. This is the Grand Designs Podcast. Who are you listening to?